All right, we're going to get started. Welcome to your second success session with your time in the middle college. So hopefully you have been doing some review for the SAT that's coming up. That was the big stuff that we talked about in the last one, and then just kind of reflecting on the first semester. So if you didn't attend one of those, you should have an email with that video, or I can resend that, and maybe we'll resend that with the follow-up to this one. Even though you're here, I'll be sending everybody a email with all the links and everything that we look at together today. But today we're going to talk about planning for your 12th grade year or your second year with the Blue Water Middle College, and kind of refreshing your memory on what to think about when you're scheduling your classes, how to choose your classes. We'll do some updates and news. We'll talk a little bit more about the SAT, even though we already have talked about it quite a bit, but just kind of the logistics of it. It's coming up just next week. We'll talk about registration, what to consider, thinking about your high school scheduling, prepping for the SAT. We have already kind of addressed, but we'll look at that again real briefly. Sorry, we keep having some stragglers, which is totally fine. Just checking things off. Okay, so the semester is winding down really fast. I don't know if it's gone fast for you guys, but it's gone really fast for us in the office. You have basically 3.5 weeks until finals. And I've been meeting with students a lot in the last week or two, getting ready for registration, and people seem like there's a lot of stuff going on, lots of assignments, like wrapping up the semester. Things are getting a little hectic, so make sure you're still working hard. Keep pushing. There's still time to bring things up. You could maybe do some things with these big tests and assignments at the end of your semester that could really make a huge difference in your grades and your GPA one way or the other. So make sure you're working hard and ask for help. Finals week is the first week of May, the 2nd through the 6th, and then you're done for the year. You'll have 1 year under your belt for college. So just make sure that you're doing all the stuff that we've talked about through the year, getting to class, completing every assignment, connect with your instructor. Definitely don't let things slip by you at this point or get behind. Earning the credits, if you have a D- or higher, you are passing and you'll get the credit. As long as you can keep that D- or higher, but that's something to really make sure you're staying on top of. If you are at a point where you're thinking about withdrawing, keep in mind you have to work with one of us before you'd be allowed to do that. So the deadline is April 22nd, which is just about a week and a half away, or 2.5 weeks away. So if that's something that's on your mind, reach out to one of us ASAP, and we'll kind of talk you through it. It's a great option if you've really tried everything and aren't making progress, but we're going to definitely want to see that you have talked to your instructor, asked for help, done all that stuff that we've talked about. Okay, so because of that, so if your GPA, just a reminder about the whole academic warning policy and procedure at SC4, that any student at the college, it's not just middle college students, and actually it's not just SC4 students, all colleges have this policy where you have to keep your GPA above a 2.0 in order to be considered making satisfactory academic progress. So if you dip below a 2.0 with your GPA, that would put you on academic warning for the next semester, which would be fall. Being on warning in the fall is particularly scary because if you don't get that GPA above the 2.0, this following semester that you would be suspended for would be winter semester, where you wouldn't be able to wouldn't be allowed to take college classes. So as you can see, those consequences get really big. So again, making sure that you're working hard and getting every point that you can get, and keeping that GPA up as high as possible. And again, let us know if you're having trouble. Okay, so the other exciting part of the semester ending is that you're going to be able to return your books pretty soon and get those off your plate and have that closure at the end of the semester. So we can start taking the books the week of April 25th, which is just a couple weeks away. That's only just the week before finals. We don't want you to return them too soon, and sometimes people do. But if you need the books to study for your finals, don't return them until your final is over. I really recommend dropping them off after your last exam, whether that's finals week or some instructors do the final test the week before. Whatever it is, drop it off. That's a nice like closure to the school year. Bring everything in. It's just your textbooks. You do get to keep your Chromebooks over the summer, which we'll look at in a second. The deadline to return those is the Friday, May 6th, which is the Friday of exam week. So don't wait and say, oh, well, I'll do it later this week and then forget, because a lot of times you get kind of going into the end of the school year at your high school, or things get busy, or all of a sudden now you don't have gas money, all that stuff. So just do it while you're on campus. If they're not returned on time, there is a $25 fee for that. And that would have to be paid before you could get your next books. It puts all these other things into motion. So just return them on time and avoid any negative consequences there. The Chromebooks you do keep over the summer, so that's a little bit different than when you had the one from the high school. So just be smart about it. Don't bring it with you to the beach to like watch a movie or something while you're there. Be careful about not letting it get damaged. If it is damaged for whatever reason or whatever happened, sometimes it's your fault, like you broke it, and that's okay. Just let us know. The best way to deal with it is just to let us know. We can kind of help you figure that out. There are some things that Chromebooks do some wonky stuff. It's not your fault. There's things like the charger's not working, or different keys get stuck or fall off. So if something like that has happened, definitely let us know. That's not your fault. And we can get you a new one so that you can actually use it. Okay, so the MME testing. So this is the Michigan Merit Exam, basically. But the big thing that you've been prepared for and thinking about is the SAT. That's actually on Wednesday, April 13th. Usually it is on a Tuesday, but they've pushed it back a day. So the SAT is next Wednesday. If you go to one of the partner high schools, Fort Huron High, Northern, Yale, Memphis, KPAC, Algonac, you would be taking that with your partner school, and you probably already worked on the bubbling and done all that, and you're pretty prepared, or you have some information on that. If you are an unaffiliated student, you'd be testing here at SC4 with us. And Mr. Ruiz has sent emails about that. And there are sessions this week, and I think next week, maybe Monday, to come in and do the initial, like there's a whole process where you have to bubble in your name and all that stuff, and have your, like, choose which schools you want that sent to. And so that takes some time. So schools will usually do that ahead of time. So look for an email from Mr. Ruiz if you're an unaffiliated student. Otherwise, if you don't have the information, if you go to one of the partner high schools, ask someone there, ask your counselor, but most likely you should, I'm guessing that you all have that information by now. So Wednesday is the SAT. Thursday, the next day, is the ACT work keys, which is a helpful thing depending on what you're going into. Some fields do ask you to submit work keys scores, and that could be something that you would just have done and not have to mess with again. So definitely try your hardest. And I think schools are judged a little bit on how their students do on both of these. So trying your best will be good for your school, good for you, and will help you in the future. We've talked extensively about how important the SAT is, so I won't repeat myself too much there. MSTEP exams are also given, and that varies by the school, and those are given at the school, and you would get information about that. Okay, so the SAT, when you're doing that bubbling in, if you haven't already, make sure that you list SC4 as one of your colleges to have your scores sent to. That's how SC4 will get your scores, so that they can use those for course placement, which really can just be used for your English placement at this point. But that can be a handy thing. And so make sure you do that. Also, you'll send that to whatever colleges you're thinking about going to. Don't be afraid to send it to the colleges you're thinking of. Even though most of the schools are still kind of test optional, it probably will get back to that they're going to be requiring SATs by the time you guys are applying for colleges. So it can't hurt, just send them. They won't use it against you. If it helps, it helps. If not, they'll just ignore it. There is that website that has the prep and practice. Like there's a video that kind of shows you how to navigate the Khan Academy stuff. But if you have not been practicing, I really, really recommend spending some time over the next week, basically. You're taking that a week from tomorrow. So do what you can, even if it's just taking one full length test just to give it some practice. Okay, so it looks like somebody asked, I did the sheet today and they told me not to put SC4 as one of the colleges, so I never put it on there. At your high school, I'm guessing, which is interesting. So I'm not sure why that is. Was that a counselor that said that? If you don't mind, the person that asked me that, a counselor. Okay, so that's a great point. Thank you for saying that, because some colleges or some counselors can just send the scores directly to SC4. And so I think probably their point is not to waste a space by sending it to SC4. So it's up to you. That takes time because we have to wait for the scores to come in. It takes longer for the schools to get the scores. We don't get them as quickly as you get your scores back. So it would just take a little bit more time for SC4 to have those. So that is a personal preference thing. If you can put it there, you have the space, great, do it. But if not, you're okay. Like they'll be able to send the scores. Thank you for asking that. That was a great question. So the prep stuff is there. You know how to get to the website. That there's pages on that. Definitely give it some time. I think I was saying, I'm sorry, I keep distracting myself with things, but so the prep and practice that you do, if you don't have time or you haven't done anything, I would really, really recommend doing one of the full length time tests to really just practice that at the very least, getting your pacing down. A very common thing that happens is that people run out of time. So that would be something to practice for sure at a minimum. So a question that I've gotten is, do we have to take the SAT and the ACT? What about our classes those days? Those are also great questions. So you do not have to take both. Basically in Michigan, it used to be the ACT and they've changed it to the SAT. So colleges will take either. So you don't have to take both. Sometimes people will try the ACT instead of retaking the SAT, just as a different thing, but the tests are very similar. So there's not much of a difference in people's scores. Like there is kind of a conversion process to, like, if you have a 23 on the ACT, it gives you this for the SAT or vice versa. And people's scores usually end up pretty similar. Your classes those days, that is a great question because you may end up getting out of your high school a little bit later than you normally would. I would just give your instructors the heads up if you have a Wednesday class. Like if you have a Wednesday at 1 o'clock class, just tell them I have the SAT. I'm going to really try to get here, but it might not be up to me when I get out of there. So I might be a little bit late, but they will appreciate you still coming. Never have the schools gotten done so late that people haven't been able to make it to class, but every year we have some people use that as a fake excuse. So if an instructor says, I had 4 kids out and they didn't show up at all, and that becomes a problem, we're not going to have any choice but to throw you under the bus and say, okay, well, that particular high school finished and dismissed at 12 o'clock. There's no reason they couldn't have been to a 1 o'clock class. So be reasonable. If you have time and you can get to your college class, I really recommend still sticking with it, but you may want to give your instructor a heads up, you'll be late. The other question that was asked is, are we able to take it again next year? You can absolutely retake the SAT. And I really, really recommend it, especially because you do get this free try with it. By the schools requiring it, this is a free attempt at it. And that's a fairly relatively new thing. Back in the olden days when I was in high school, you had to pay to take it. We didn't get a free attempt at it. So you can look at it like this is just your free one to just kind of like check it out and see what it's like. Retaking it, doing more practice, the data shows that scores go up. It does cost money to retake it. You would have to pay the fee to retake it. And the test fee, I think, is like $45. There are some fee waivers if you're eligible. Basically, if you're eligible for like free and reduced lunch, you're eligible for that. And there's some other eligibility stuff too. So don't let the fee not like be why you don't retake it, but that'll also be the retaking of everything is something that we'll talk a lot more about next year as we're talking about like, okay, now you have your initial score. Let's see where that places you based on the admission requirements to the schools you're thinking about going to, or the scholarship cutoffs for various amounts. So those are really great questions about the SAT. Are there any more before I move on from the SAT stuff? That one. Do we need to take the SAT and the Nope, you don't have to take both. You're just taking the SAT. Okay, I think I know what the confusion is. So I'm going to go back a little bit. So the ACT work keys that are listed here, this is not the ACT that's like the SAT. This is just the company that does this work keys. The work keys test is actually shorter, and it's based on like almost like real world math and reading. It'll be similar to the SAT, but it will be like an easier version of it, and it's shorter. So this is not the full ACT. This is just the name of that secondary test that you do on Thursday. So SAT is the priority. The ACT work keys is just kind of the secondary thing you do. Work keys are super easy, by the way, one of the students said. So that's a good thing for you all to know. If you're not affiliated with a high school, so if you're an unaffiliated student and you have a morning class, you're not excused, but that is a great question. You would just have to let your instructor know that you are taking the SAT, and it would just be an absence from that class. Great questions. Okay, so hopefully I've answered everything, but if you like, we can talk more about this at the end too, if people have more questions. Thank you everybody for chiming in, because those were really great insight, especially on this, that if you have too many colleges that you want it sent to, sending it to SC4 is really the easiest way to get that done. That we can send that, or your counselors can send that, basically. Okay, so fall registration, that's the big thing that we're working on today, refreshing your memory on how to register. I'm really just kind of pointing you to some videos to watch if you need some refreshers there. What about those who have online classes? Are they not excused? If you have an online class at the college, you wouldn't have a reason to be excused. You just wouldn't work on it that morning that you were at the SAT. I think that's what you're asking, but I'm not sure. So if you have another question on that, just stick around or we can address it. Okay, I think I answered it. Perfect. Great questions, everyone. Okay, so registration opens Monday, technically Sunday night at midnight. I'm always curious to hear like who stays up till midnight, who just does it in the morning. I know I've like given some advice to maybe if you're gonna go to sleep and wake yourself up to do this, maybe just do it in the middle of the night and let all those midnight people stay up, and then you can kind of hit it after that. A lot to consider. These are things that we have talked about throughout seminar when we were first teaching you how to register for this semester, but it's stuff that as each semester goes, these factors get more and more important as you kind of start checking things off on your degree and getting further along. So you're going to need to obviously first and foremost pay attention to what courses you need for your degree. Prerequisite classes, we'll talk about that, but those are important. Depending on what you're doing, you may have like a progression of classes where you kind of need to start one before you can do the rest. I'll point out kind of some examples of that. Courses that will transfer to other schools are important. If you know you have that big idea of where you want to go and what you want to major in, what you want to do for a career, come and talk to one of us and we can talk you through and we can look up specifically what you can take. Okay, so we're going to talk about the AccuPlacer. That was the next question I have. We'll touch on that because I know that email got people confused or like worked up. So we're actually going to address that. So the person that asked me about the AccuPlacer, if I forget or I don't answer your question, ask me again, but I think I'll hit it. And that's a good thing to know for the prerequisites and what you place into for your degree for the English and math. The other thing is some students are taking college classes to count for high school graduation. I'll talk about the pros and cons of that and how that would work. And then obviously the last thing is just what fits your schedule. And you're now going to be taking one less class at the high school, so you can start a little bit earlier at the college. We'll talk about that. Okay, so what you need for your degree is that whole thing where we have those sheets that in seminar, we really looked at, okay, what degree are you working on? And then it's up to you to kind of find the sheet for that. So I'm going to pop over to this page and refresh your memory on where all that stuff is. So our website, bluewatermiddlecollege.org, under current students, these first 3 tabs are going to be really helpful if you need refreshing on kind of any point of this. So the planning for your degree really walks you through basically what we're going to talk about right now. This program of study is a great tool to kind of use to map out what you're going to do. I use this a lot. I've been using this with students like today as I've helped people kind of plan for their 12th grade year or their final year. This just reiterates the things that we're doing. The second tab, SC4 registration, is where we've got videos that really walk you through how to do all this stuff in the service center. So if you've kind of forgotten those pieces of it, this page is really helpful. You can watch wherever you're at, basically. The service center overview just kind of talks about the whole thing. You can watch any of these pieces, all of them. Using it for planning would be kind of to look at what degree you're doing and use that My Progress bar. You can see what requirements are listed. You can actually take things and put them onto your plan for this semester, later semesters. And then this last thing is like how to actually officially do the registration, get your, use the filters to decide what actual class section and time that you want to register. So all of these are really helpful if you've forgotten any of that. We're also happy to meet with anybody. I will say my calendar is pretty much entirely full through this week. So if anybody, how many classes are we required to take and can we take more? So as a 12th grader, you're taking 3 college classes unless you are an unaffiliated student and you can take more than that, basically. Then you're just looking at credits. But if you are a student that goes to one of the partner high schools, you take 3 college classes each semester. So that's nice where you're 3 high school, 3 college. This would help you with this stuff. Reach out if you would like to come in and speak with somebody. We can really help you wherever you're at in the process. If it's just like, I just have no idea what I'm doing and I just want to talk to somebody, that's totally fine. If you have ideas about where you want to go after SC4, it would be good to kind of start that talk now. Like we can look at transfer guides and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But we can really look up very detailed information where you can know exactly what classes to take. So that could be helpful if you need that. But these will help refresh your memory on the schedule, like the actual service center stuff. Scheduling documents are where you can do kind of all that planning outside of the service center. So if you are working on one of these degrees, arts, science, general education, if you are still thinking about general ed, I would really encourage you to choose arts or science. The gen ed degree does not fill enough requirements to transfer very well. And so if you know you're going to get a 4-year degree after SC4, then I would really encourage you to do either the arts or the science. So just to kind of refresh your memory on that, this is what that looks like for the arts. Hopefully the things you're doing have kind of started to check some things off, but you just would kind of look at this and choose what classes. Make sure you're paying close attention to what class counts where. I just met with a student who took GO 102, which is a human geography class, and he thought that it was going to count for a science because there's a bunch of geo down here. So there are some categories that count in different groups. Some of the histories are that way. Oftentimes people will take the wrong history thinking they're going to get a humanities, but they take one of these instead. So pay close attention to that. For the arts degree, keep in mind that eventually you need to have 2 200 level classes from either the social science, humanities, or additional course group. So just keep that in mind. There's a ton of criminal justice, These literature classes are great for that, but you usually have to get English 101 done first. Psychologies, there's 200 levels that are great for that. Sociology, so there's a ton of options there. So that's the kind of the basics of the arts. The science, this is something to just kind of remind you, if you want to work towards a science, that's great. Most people, unless you are going into like medical, engineering, computer programming, stuff like very science obviously focused, I would say most people would be doing the arts, but the science is absolutely fine too. You can email me to set up a time to schedule classes, and I'll have all of our email addresses up before the end of this. And I would recommend that. Actually, that's great. So the science degree, one thing I want to just refresh, because a lot of times people are doing the science because they want to go into engineering or because they want to go into medical. And so you could take anything, like you could take astronomy and geology, and it would check that requirement off, but it's important to know what you'll need for later on. So that's where, if you have those ideas about what you want to do for a career, I really encourage you to talk to one of us or talk to an SC4 advisor so we can make sure we're getting you the right classes within these categories that will work for your future. For example, the chemistry 111, 112, 215, 216 is required for most colleges if you're thinking about doing anything pre-med, pre-dental, pre-physical therapy, physician's assistant. And those are 4 things where you have to do one before you can do the next. So you would have to start with 111 next fall in order to be able to fit them all in. So those are the kinds of things where it's important to kind of know where you're headed. Switching from the arts to the science is no big deal at all. You can do that at any time. And you kind of, this first couple of years, you're working on like the requirements are pretty much the same. So I'll kind of zoom out just to show you that. So you've got the social science, humanities, science, math, English. Those are the same on both degrees. So while you're working on those things, you're not even really necessarily forced to make a decision between the two of them. You have decided because you had to choose one when you applied to SC4, but it's totally fine. And those are pretty easy to change between. So if you get into a scenario where you're like, well, I don't know if I can do math with 13 or higher, I'd rather maybe do the math 104 and switch to the arts degree, that's totally fine. You have to actually like request to have that changed. And if you do want to change your degree, you can let any of us in the office know and we can send it to the advisors and then they just change it for you. Those are great questions. Awesome. I feel like I missed a question. 1 second. I think I got them all. Okay, so the other things that are super helpful, this degree planning template is that thing with the program of study. And this I really feel is so helpful, where you can really list the things you're doing here and see the credits. And actually I need to get you an updated version of that. If anybody would like me to do a review of where they're at, I can do this and send it to you, or we can do that together in a meeting. The MTA we've kind of talked about there. Oh, if you're working on an applied degree, that's really important that you know the list of requirements because they're a lot more specific. So kind of criminal justice is one of the popular ones that a lot of people do. So that would take you to the page, and then what you'd be looking for is the complete list of classes. And that's where it brings up that like list of the required courses. So it shows you exactly what you need to take. The rest of these are just kind of helpful for specific situations, but lots of helpful things here. Those 3 are probably the biggest helpful things. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. Let's see if I covered everything there. So we've looked at that. Oh, while we're over here, I'll show you just kind of the SAT prep and practices here. So if you need kind of a refresher, or just you can go, I would really recommend going to Khan Academy and doing that. And then the rest we looked at. So all of those degrees are there. This link brings you right to the degrees. So I'll include that in the email that I send you. Or, let's see, sorry. Oh my gosh, I can't get to the, there we go. Oh geez. Okay, so this link is helpful for the actual applied degrees, if anybody is doing one of those. I'm trying to bring the chat up, but it's not working for me, so I will send it to you in the email follow-up. Okay, so the prerequisites, I've kind of pointed out that you need to really know what you need for your degree and kind of work backwards from that stuff. If you're doing one of those applied degrees, I really recommend you can map all that stuff out right now. You could take this whole list for the criminal justice. Once you go to this degree, when you click on the class, it pops up the description and what the prerequisite is. So anybody doing criminal justice knows they can't take CJ 280 until they take CJ 101. So that's really, really important for you to check if you're doing one of these applied degrees that has that list of specific requirements. Know what you need. Don't just plan one semester at a time. I really recommend planning out as much as you can. And then you can kind of have some flexibility within that potentially, but some things have to happen now in order for you to finish on time. This is again, just kind of an example of that sheet. Okay, so the English and math placement. So we've kind of told you not to worry about it for right now. And then Mr. Ruiz sent that email and everybody started worrying about it. If you want to jump into English and math at the college, that's totally fine. I am not a fan of it. I really firmly believe you should stick with your English and math at the high school. Every single year, we have people taking a college class for their last English credit or their last math credit, and something goes crazy. Something happens with an instructor. Something happens where you have to miss a big test, whatever the case. And then people end up withdrawing or failing from something that they need for a high school graduation requirement. I really, really firmly think if you can fit your high school requirements in at the high school, just do that stuff there. If you want to double up, that's okay, but I still would recommend you do your final credits at the high school. Some people, like some of the classes, I don't know if I have it here, but there are some classes, there are some science classes that have these English and math prerequisites where it might say you have to, the prereq would be English 75 or appropriate placement testing. And what that means is that you would have to place past it. You would have to place into English 101. So when you take that, that's what you'd be shooting for. For the English, you're just shooting to place into English 101. For the math, you're looking to place into 104, 110, or 112 or higher. And I'm going to skip ahead and show you basically the grids for that. So these are also on that list. You know what, I'm going to just pop over to what we just looked at. So on our page with the scheduling documents, we have those sheets, the AccuPlacer placement guide and the SAT. The SAT is going to be somewhat meaningless to you right now because you haven't taken it, right? But if, you know, you can know that I want to shoot to have a 25 on the writing portion so that I can take English 101. That's great. Obviously, you're just going to try your best on the SAT and you're not really looking just to get your 25, right? So that's probably not so relevant now, but this can be something that you can access once you get your scores back. The other piece, the AccuPlacer, is when you take that, it'll show you what you place into. So for the English classes, you're taking the right placer, which is basically an essay. You're writing an essay. You would need a 5 or higher to place into English 101. So if you place into English 75, when you're looking at, let's look at the kind of the course catalog, and I'll pull up a class that has that. So a lot of the bio classes have these prerequisites that include English or math. So Bio 101, the first one, it's requiring you to either take English 50 or English 75 and Math 75, which, just to remind you, these are developmental classes. If they're below a 100 level, we can't pay for those. So that's where it's important that you would have to just place past these before you would take this science class. So English 75 would be a 4 or lower on the right placer. For the math, the test is like, it's one math test, but it's going to start you with really basic stuff, arithmetic. Some of that's going to be really basic math, like literally adding and subtracting, multiply, divide. A lot will be like middle school stuff, pre-algebra kinds of things. And if you don't get enough of those right, then it just ends the test and it gives you one of these low scores. If you do well enough, you get enough of those first questions right, it bumps you up to this next test, the quantitative reasoning, algebra, and statistics. Depending on how you do in that chunk, it'll give you one of these scores. If you do really well, it'll bump you up even further to the advanced algebra and functions. And then once you get into that test, you're pretty much guaranteed to get into the classes that will finish your degree or into Math 114, Calc 1. Excuse me, sorry. So for the math, you're going to shoot not for the 75, 81, 82. The first category that you'd want to, or the first like level that you'd be looking for is the Math 104, 110, or 112. If you place into one of these, you could absolutely take one of these, 110 or 112, and then take 113 or 120 afterwards. Let me just point out kind of the progression. So basically, if you place into that level, Math 120, or sorry, Math 110 is like the equivalent of Algebra 2, and then 112 is the equivalent of Algebra 2 and Trig. So 110 is a 4 credit, and it's just the Algebra 2. 112 is a 5 credit, and it's Algebra 2 and Trig. Math 112 qualifies you to next take either Math 113, which is pre-calculus, or Math 120, which is statistics. And either one of those would finish the science degree or any of the degrees for you. 110 only qualifies you to next take the trigonometry separate and then do pre-calc, or to take 110 and then you can go to 120 for statistics. So that's all somewhat complicated. We used to have a math placement chart here that I don't see, so we'll get that added so you can kind of see that. But if you have questions, just let me know. Okay, that was probably a little more complicated than it needed to be, but that's the basics there. So those charts are there on that page. You're just placing into English 101 or you're not. It's not possible to place above that and go directly to 102. For the English, you can use your AccuPlacer or eventually use your SAT scores. For the math, they're not using SAT scores anymore, but they will use your high school transcript. So that was also in that email from Mr. Ruiz. And that's where a lot of people had questions. I will point out how to find your AccuPlacer scores in just a moment. So this is basically to place into the math. I would recommend just doing the AccuPlacer. Or if you don't need to take math right away next year or in the fall, wait and use your Algebra 2 grade this year. If you get a B or higher, you can use it for placement. You do have to basically email me that I then pass on to SC4. There's a process for that, but if you're using that after this year is over, or if you already took Algebra 2 last year and can use it, then we can do that now. Basically, you just have to tell me which class you want, and then we would send it to SC4 to have them register it for you. They can't preload it. I think that next page, basically. So it would have to be a B or higher both semesters of your Algebra 2 class. So again, you'd have to talk to one of us, me probably preferably. I'll help you figure out which section, where you could tell me which section, and then I would just pass it on to SC4 and get it registered for you. So they're not able to preload that. So that wouldn't be something that you'd be able to register overnight, Sunday night, or on your own that would need to be sent by one of us. But don't let that stop you from registering. You can still register for everything else, and then we can register the math for you right away Monday morning. And if you know what you want to take, you can send that to me now or ask me now, and we can have it sent over. So they'll just do it first thing Monday morning. And math classes don't usually fill out that fast, so you wouldn't have to really worry about that. So if I took Algebra 2 and I sent you the grades, and I can actually look at your transcript for you, you would not have to take the math AccuPlacer. That is correct. If you got a B or higher in both semesters of Algebra 2, that places you directly into Math 113 or 120. So you wouldn't have to take the AccuPlacer. Great questions. And let me just quickly show you how to find those. Let's see. So in your portal, I'm just going to sign in as myself, which I don't have AccuPlacer scores, but I have like the old version of it. So when you're in your main menu, you're going to go to student planning. And then under academics, you would go to test summary. And that will list your scores. So once you had the SAT, it would show up under admissions test. The placement test would show you like AccuPlacer scores. And it would say basically like AccuPlacer QAS 239. And so you would look at this chart and say, okay, QAS is this quantitative algebra statistics 239. Oh, shoot, that puts me in math 81 or 82. So it's a little bit of some legwork to figure it out. If you can figure it out on your own, that's wonderful, but you could also just shoot me an email and I can tell you your score pretty quick. So I've been doing a lot of these. So if you have questions on that, let me know. I think while we're in here, I'm going to come back to the service center and kind of show you around a few things if we have time. What if you are taking core classes? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Like if you're taking English, math, science at the high school or at the college, basically if you want to take English or math at the college, you have to place into it with the AccuPlacer or wait for your SAT scores. But if you wait for your SAT scores, you can't register for fall until those are in. So I think that's maybe what you're asking, but I'm not sure. Okay. So again, there's info. There's info about how to study on our site that I'll show you. Core algebra classes in the high school. Oh, so like it's just called core algebra. So I think it has to be called specifically, has to be called Algebra 2 in order for SC4 to give you placement for the next class. I think that's maybe what you're asking, but let me know if not. Okay, so the other thing on our page, if you are going to take the AccuPlacer, this page has a whole bunch of information about it. And the other page that has a lot of great information is the SC4 page, where if you go to sc4.edu/testing, I don't know why that should hit caps lock at some point. So both of these have good resources for how to study for the AccuPlacer. For the this page kind of shows just like there are a lot of different AccuPlacer options. What you would be looking at specifically would be the right placer. So this is the one that you are taking for the English. And this is a whole packet that kind of explains what they're looking for in those essays. And then they give you a bunch of examples of essays and what scores you would get and why. So this is really helpful to read through this. And then I think there are some prompts, or you could use any of these prompts that they give you to try some essays on your own. You could also reach out to the Writing Center for help on this. There are tutors specific for both AccuPlacer, both the English and the math. The other thing for the math is that you can look at these practice problems for the arithmetic, quantitative reasoning, or advanced algebra. But another thing that SC4 recommends, and I think that it's listed either here or on the SC4 page, is to use Khan Academy to study. So the studying you're doing right now for the SAT will help you prepare for this. On the SC4 page somewhere, got way too many tabs open. It shows you just kind of how to schedule a test. So once you're ready, you can schedule it online by clicking this button, or you can call this number. It's easy to schedule it online, and I would recommend it. It will ask for your student number. So if you don't know that, I'll show you how to look at that on your transcript, or you can ask me for it and I can send it to you. Down below though is where they talk about preparing. So the AccuPlacer and Right Placer is what you'd be looking at. And it brings you to kind of the process. And then they have under this tab study materials. So it's the same stuff. For the AccuPlacer math, they recommend using Khan Academy and basically studying pre-algebra and algebra 1. And I can send you a link for that too. So I'm not actually even seeing the pre-algebra stuff, but I have those, and I'm going to update this. I will update this page with that information too. So I'll send you a whole bunch of stuff, whether you're interested in this right now, or you're going to wait and take it later, or wait for your SAT, that's fine, but it will be there for you. So the person that was asking about core classes, if it says core algebra 2, that works. As long as it has algebra 2 in the name, that works. And also if you're at one of the schools where they stretch it and make it into intermediate algebra, that can also work. If you want to take English 101 for fall semester, is it too late to take the AccuPlacer? It is not. You could make an appointment and get in like tomorrow, probably. Usually they have a lot of testing options open. I would recommend doing some prep, maybe prep over the weekend, take it next week. Register on Sunday night or Monday for classes that will work that you don't need, and you can always change your schedule later once you place into whatever class you're trying to place into. But you can take the AccuPlacer even over the summer and change your schedule then. But I would recommend doing it sooner than later. The English 101 classes do kind of fill up. Math classes don't fill up as quick, but some will. You're good for the next week or two, but things will start to fill up over as we get through the weeks here. Okay, so I think I'm going to show you, before I head back to the presentation, let me go back to the service center. So if you are looking for, if you look for your transcript, so if you go to academics and then unofficial transcript, and then click on it, and it'll pop up as a PDF. It will have your student number in the upper right hand corner. So mine is very old. It starts with 011. Yours all start with like 028. So that's where you can find your student ID there. Or you can email me and I can send it to you also. Okay, so it is not hard to score into English 101, but it does take a little bit of prep. So you don't need an AccuPlacer yet if you're going to finish your English at the high school, but most high schools don't offer English 101 and 102. So that would be something that to take English 101 at the college, you do have to take the AccuPlacer, but you don't have to take it for your high school classes. All right, awesome. I'm going to move on from the AccuPlacer. So if you still have questions on it, stick around afterwards and I can answer like whatever your specific situation is. Okay, so that stuff I had already pointed out. All right, so if you do place into one of these English 50, 75, Math 75, I would not recommend taking those. All of you are achieving at higher levels than what these classes are. It's just a matter of redoing whatever you have to place into them, to place into the higher level classes. You can choose it, but you would have to pay for it yourself. You can't pay for these, and they don't count for credit towards your degree. It's basically like a class that costs money and takes your time and gives you somewhat nothing. You are capable of placing past it. You just have to maybe do a little extra work, meet with a tutor, talk to one of us if you're having trouble, but I would not recommend taking those. Okay, so moving on to the stuff that transfers. So if you have some ideas of what career you want to pursue, the level of education that's required, if you know a specific bachelor's degree that you want to pursue, and then what colleges you're thinking about, or even if you're not, if you are like, I think I might want to do some kind of engineering and I don't really know where I want to go, that's okay. Come and talk to one of us and we can help you figure that stuff out. We can give you some ideas of colleges. And really, the main thing is that we can look at a few schools that, even if that's not where you're thinking of going, we can get some ideas on what kind of classes you could take that would transfer for that degree. Oftentimes, they're pretty similar between the schools, like if you're doing a similar program. So those are the things that we can help you with. And you can do some of this research on your own. I always start with Google. So there are these things called transfer guides that are awesome. Some schools have really, really great ones. Some don't have any. My alma mater, Michigan State, is actually, they have nothing. So if you were to Google MSU transfer, it'll take you to this page where you can look up class by class, but it doesn't have just a nice guide that says, if you go to SC4, this is what you should take if you want to major in psychology. A school like Oakland has the best. So if you Google Oakland transfer guides, it's going to bring you to this page where you then say what college you're coming from. So you're coming from SC4. So you usually have to scroll all the way down, find St. Clair County Community College, and then you're going to click on each of these and figure out where your degree is. So I don't know what integrated studies is, but a lot of them fall under arts and sciences. So let's say graphic design. If you were thinking about going to Oakland for graphic design, this will tell you exactly what you can take. These 4 classes you can take at SC4 and they will transfer for your bachelor's degree. So it's not just the basic stuff that you're doing. The arts and science degrees are meant to kind of check off the general education requirements. So they touch on that below, that if you're transferring, having completed the MTA, which you will have that complete if you are completing the arts or science degree, then you don't have to do any of the general education requirements. If you do not have the MTA done, then you'd have to work through that list, and that's a whole different issue. I would really recommend having the MTA done as a very minimum. Even if you don't get a degree, completing the MTA is really helpful. So that's an example of a transfer guide. They're really awesome. The schools that have the nice ones, it makes it very, very easy. But if you're going to a school that doesn't have nice transfer guides, that's okay. We can do a little digging. But I would say that's when you'd really want to talk to one of us or an SC4 advisor to have somebody do all that puzzle piecing for you. Or we would do it together. I'd kind of show you how to do it. The right page. Okay, so you can do some of the research on your own, but I wouldn't completely depend on it. If you want to just kind of start exploring and seeing, that's wonderful. But I would really, really recommend that if you know where you want to go, what you want to major in, to talk to one of us or talk to an SC4 advisor, whether you know or whether you don't know. I really recommend reaching out to one of us or an SC4 advisor once a year, once a semester. Like it can't hurt. If you have a pretty good plan and it doesn't change, that's great. That would be a really quick meeting. But if not, then we can get kind of some conversations down and help you start figuring that stuff out. Meeting the MTA is a basic thing. Again, by doing the arts and science, you're finishing the MTA requirements. If you're pursuing the business transfer, I recommend combining it with the MTA. So if you're thinking about going away to a 4-year school and majoring in business of any kind, talk to me and I'll help you kind of plan that out so that you can have both the business transfer degree done and the MTA. Another thing to consider when you're registering or choosing your classes is what classes you need for high school graduation. I kind of strongly said already that if you have room to finish your requirements at the high school, I really, really recommend you do it. If something crazy happens, the high school is going to be a little bit more willing and a little bit more able to work with you to make sure that you get that credit so that you march in graduation. Your SC4 instructors will not care if you have not done the work. They're not going to pass you just because they feel bad for you that you're not going to march in graduation. And honestly, truly, we're in this section right now, not for you guys, but the current 12th graders. There are people that are in this boat of exactly what I'm talking about, that they're taking a math class that maybe was too hard, or they took it online. I definitely don't recommend taking a math or English or science online, especially if you need it for a high school requirement. Whatever the case, something has gone wrong. They're now saying, okay, well, I have to withdraw, but I needed it for graduation. And so now they're left having to scramble and figure out another option. Sometimes the high school can give you credit recovery, but sometimes there's really nothing else that you can take that can finish that. So it's really important that you take this seriously. If you do have to take something at the college for high school requirement, I would recommend taking it in the fall so that you have it done with and not saving it for that final semester next winter. If you have more than 3 requirements left, you're going to kind of have to, because you're just going to be at the high school for 3 periods next year. If you're somebody that wants to make room for band, choir, anything like that, that's totally fine. We can make the room for it. But I would really recommend, if you need to take a college class for high school requirement, to talk to one of us so that we can give you good advice on what would be easier to take at the college versus what would be difficult. A high school course, so there are some times where people want to take a certain class, or maybe you need a requirement and there's just not a morning version that can count. That would be a good reason too. If you are in tech, that's another good reason where you've had to do all of your high school requirements with college classes. So a question I have, will political science cover a history credit? And it will not. Political science PS 101 is your civics requirement. Your high school counselor should know that. And yeah, so the person that asked me this, you and I, if you can stick around, we can talk afterwards, or shoot me an email and I'll figure out what you have left and kind of will help you come up with a plan. So there are some schools where the counselors will say, talk to your middle college advisor. That's wonderful. We can help you figure out what you have left and come up with a plan for it. But ultimately, your high school counselors do have to schedule your classes because that's where you're taking them. So we'll work together. But if they're just directing to you without really giving you an answer, definitely reach out to one of us and we can help you with that. Okay, so we're going to be, Mrs. Barr does a wonderful review of everyone's graduation requirements in their progress and kind of what they would have left to complete in 12th grade. She does that as soon as high school grades are posted in June, and she turns that around really quick, does a review of everybody's progress, and then sends you a letter home. So it would tell you exactly what you have left. And if you are registered for stuff at the high school that will complete it, or if you're registered for things at the college that can complete it. If you are not registered for one of your requirements, she would give you some ideas. It's a great, great resource, and it's something to really make sure that you're watching the mail for. That is that you're going to have to finish all of that for English, for math, all of that stuff by the end of 12th grade in order to march in graduation. So it's really important that you have a plan to get that done. One final thing that you will not be able to do next year and will have to do in your final year is the math related course in your final year. So your counselors right now, as you've been scheduling for senior year, have probably referred to it as senior math, because for students that stay at their high school, your final year is your senior year, your 12th grade year. So that's what in their minds, it's called senior math. But the wording in the law is actually that you have to take a math in your final year of high school. So obviously you're kind of stuck where you have to take your 4 math credits by the end of 12th grade in order to march in graduation. But then you also need a math related course in your final year. So yes, you will end up taking more math than your classmates. If you want to take your SC4 math class next year, that's totally fine. There's a ton of other stuff that can count for your degree. There are things like science classes. There's a business 199 that's called personal finance that would actually be a great elective for your 13th year that would check that off and also help you in your real life. If you have questions about this, let us know. But what I recommend is finish your 4th credit next year as a senior at your high school. And then in your 13th year is when you could do the math requirement for your SC4 degree. Okay, so do pre-calc or whatever you're going to do for your 4th math at the high school. 13th year, you jump into your math at the college for your degree. Every year I have questions on this. 1 semester of math in your 13th year counts. So you just need 1 semester and it will count for this like final year math requirement. But it does have to be like you have to have your 4 full credits done by the end of this year, or sorry, by the end of 12th grade. And then this would just be like 1 semester in your 13th year. So we can help you plan that out. Let me know if you have questions about what else can work. And we'll bug you about this probably every time we talk. I'm the one that would be reaching out, so let me know if you have questions. I think the last thing to consider is just your time constraints. So you are open a little bit sooner for your college classes by just being at the high school for 1st through 3rd hour. That means you can start college classes at noon. Lucky Port Huron High and Port Huron Northern students that are so much closer to campus, you can take an 11:30 class, but there are very, very few of those offered. You cannot take an 11 a.m. class. Every semester people try to do it, and every semester those get dropped. So it's not possible and it's not safe for you to get out of high school at 10:45 and be sitting in your seat at SC4 by 11 o'clock. So it won't be allowed. Your principal won't allow it. Don't even bother to ask. Sorry, we've had it every year. That's been a battle. So there's 3 college classes that you'd be taking. I think we touched on that. No exceptions are made though to the time constraints. Make sure you're reaching out to your coaches and advisors and all activities you do. I would say if you're working, schedule your stuff and then you give that to your boss. Your boss does not need to direct your high school and college schedule. If you have a job that's like that, you may want to reconsider it so that school stays the priority while you're still here and you're getting free college credit. That's definitely more valuable than whatever you could possibly be making at your job. A lot of you are making the jump. Well, actually, you're probably already your junior year, so you'll still be maybe with your same team and your same coach next year, but ask if you have any questions about your fall commitments. Online classes. So back before COVID, we used to really, really recommend people away from online classes because people really do great or really do bad. And now you're very familiar with that. So over the last couple of years, people have really said, I will never take an online class ever again in my life. Or there's been a lot of people that have said, like, actually, it was kind of awesome. I like the flexibility. I like doing it at my own pace. I can work ahead a little bit. I can take my time on things that are confusing. That's great. There is flexibility, but there are also weekly deadlines. So if you have not taken an online class, but you're curious about it and have questions, let me know. If online classes have not gone well for you, I really, really recommend that you don't keep taking them. Take an in-person section, get things back on track, and then maybe you can come back to online once you kind of get into a better place, to a better GPA. But usually there's both online and in person of almost every class. There are some classes that are only online. And so that would be something you really have no choice. So if you have a question about one of those, let us know. Okay, so nursing, if you are interested in nursing and haven't already let me know. I know there was one person I saw in the list of people that are here today that I just put you on my list today and sent you something that Mrs. Barr passed on. But this is another one where there's very specific classes that you have to take before you can apply to any of these health degrees. Each one has their own prerequisite. The nursing, the radiologic technology, also kind of known as rad tech, and respiratory therapy. The nursing program has a lot of classes. So there's these 3 you have to take. These are required prerequisites, but they also have a whole list of other classes that they don't require, but they basically incentivize you to do it because it's part of your admission score. So if you are interested in any of these, even slightly, you think you might be interested in applying for one of these programs next spring, let me know and I can walk you through the requirements. Basically, you could get the prerequisites done and take or apply to the program next spring and then start this program in your 13th year. Most of these health programs are 2-year programs, so you would have the 1 year for free with us in your 13th year, but then the 2nd year you would have to pay for once you're done with the middle college. And I can give you a lot more information if this is something you're interested in. The service center is a great tool for planning. I am kind of running out of time, so I would direct you to those videos. I have shown you how to find your test summary. I think we did a little refresher on the class schedule. You know what? I'll maybe come back to this at the very end after I get through everything else. I'll do just a little quick refresher in the service center and kind of show you these things. Yeah, so we'll move on and I'll hit this at the end once I hit everything else. The videos are really helpful. They might be fairly boring. I know that they are, I made them, but they are informative and they'll walk you through how to do that stuff. So if you have questions, do that. Oh, actually that was towards the end. So I will quickly show you that stuff. Okay, so in the service center, this is probably going to have kicked me out. Okay, it did not. So always you're doing all of your registration and student planning. There's several ways you can plan your degree. This Go to My Progress is how you will have a program listed here, and then you can scroll down and see all the stuff. So I'm going to just pretend for a quick second that I'm still in that same tab, and I'm going to go to someone else's record, Mrs. Barr, and show you what that looks like. So under the progress bar, I hope this works. Oh no, it won't let us. Okay, actually I can do this. So you'll have a program listed. Hers does not show up because it's basically so old that it won't show us the requirements. So if your program isn't right, you can always go to view a new program, or if you want to just kind of check something else out. So let's say Mrs. Barr had all that stuff that she took and she decided, I want to take the CIS programming degree. So you can click whatever degree and view program. You then have to select a year. You guys started in 2021, so you're in the newest catalog year. So you would select that, and then it gives you all kinds of information. So it will show you all of the classes that are required, and the completed things are obviously things that she did. She planned these classes at one point, political science and English 102. All these other classes that are red means she hasn't started them and has no plan for them right now. She did take some other classes that were similar to that. It's really weird. I don't know why that didn't pull in like that. Probably because she has it planned, just because she was showing people examples of this. So that's a nice tool. This tool, I think, is less, I have less confidence in this. Some of these programs, they don't assign classes correctly, like this right off the bat. She's taken these and it kind of told us that it didn't. I really think the best way to go is to go to that list of degrees that I'll send you and look at it that way. So actually like go to the degree, look at your transcript, and actually just like print this off and check things off. But the service center is helpful if you say, okay, well, I want to take CIS 110. So you can click on that and you can add the course to your plan for fall 2022. So you select the term, you add it to your plan. Then when you go back to student planning, it's there waiting for you. So student planning, and then going to plan and schedule is where you can see the stuff that you've put into your plan. And you can start to look around and see like, okay, other sections are available. Don't forget to scroll forward to fall. I just did. So I can see I have geology on my plan for right now. And I chose the Monday, Wednesday, 1 o'clock class. But if I want to view other sections, it'll show me all of them. If I wanted to switch to this one, I could click on it and click add section. Don't forget that when it says planned and it's this like beigey yellow, that is not registered. You can make your plan this week. I really recommend that you do, but you still have to go in once registration opens and make it official. Once you have your plan all set, there will be some kind of button over here that says register all classes. You click that, everything turns green and says registered but not yet started. That's how you know that it's official. You can also, once you have your plan and it's all registered, click print my schedule. It should show as green and registered here, and it will list all of your classes. I am a little bit OCD where I will then, if I choose a new class, I'm going to get rid of the stuff that I don't want. So I only have the things on there that I'm going to take. But that is just me. So that's a little refresher on the registration. It's real quick, but if you have questions about that, watch those videos. Unaffiliated students can take up to 17 credits each semester. So that is something you could do. If a class says online main building, the times, that is interesting. I'm guessing that's a speech class, and I'm going to show you that real quick because I bet that's what that is. So you can also search the course catalog outside of the service center. If you go to sc4.edu/schedule, and I'm going to just select fall and speech. But you can search your classes this way too, where you could put in different categories. You could specifically say speech 101 and click search. And it's going to just bring up what you searched for fall semester. So here it'll say the location, Port Huron campus, main building 312, means that's an in-person time, in-person class at these times and these dates. Pay attention to the dates because sometimes you might see something and not realize it doesn't start at the beginning of the semester. Some classes will start September 19th. Those are called late start. This one, online main building, means that you're doing a lot of work online, but then you are still meeting just 1 day a week instead of twice a week or whatever. And I think when she does these online speech classes, you're maybe not there every week, but you don't know what days you will be. So this says, this is another thing you can click on the class and section to get the specific information. This is helpful to look at, and they'll have information. So speeches require approximately 6 Tuesday on-campus visits. So if you can't do every Tuesday from 6 to 9, then you shouldn't register for this one. But because you don't know which weeks you'll be there or not. She does let you know, but not until the class starts. Hopefully that answered your question. So if you have any other questions about anything, registration or otherwise, let me know, stick around, shoot us an email. One of us can meet with you. The last thing that we want you to do is this degree plan. So this is kind of, I know that every time we see you, we ask you to do this stuff. I don't know why that didn't come up. Something is messing with my notes in it. So you guys will be graduating in 23 or 24. Okay, well, I'll have to send you this. This link does work. This is a, sorry, it keeps doing that. hold, please. Okay, I'll have to share that in the email in the chat because that link isn't working and I don't think this is the correct one. Let me try one more thing. So I think you guys would graduate in 2024, right? Okay, so this is the right one. This is what we need you to fill out. I will drop this in the chat. And I apologize for that. 2023, is that when you graduate though from 12th grade? So when I'm talking about grads, I'm talking about the end of your 13th year. So we're in 22. So you would graduate in 24 from us. Okay, so I will send you this link in the chat right now, or you can you can open up your camera and use that. What is this called? QR code. Brain stopping. Let me just double check. This is the right one. Yes, it is. Okay, so I'll put this in the chat. For those of you that are present right now, if you're watching this video, that is the direct link, or that QR code does work. So you would just fill this out. It's basically just walking you through the things that we just looked at, asking you what degree you're working on, asking, have you done English and math? I'm going to just kind of do this to show you. So this would walk you through, ideally you can get to having 30 credits complete by the end of next year, so that you would just have 30 left after that for the 13th year. So you're going to click your degree, say graphic design, that requires 62 credits. I'm going to have 9 credits done at the end of this semester. And next year I want to get to 30. So that means 30 minus 9. I need to finish 21 credits next year. So that's kind of weird math. If you're confused, just put everything in and I can walk you through it. The math required for that degree is Math 104. I have taken it, so I'm going to have to figure something else out for that final year math. I have not taken English 101 or 102. This is all just, pretend. You would answer yours. And then here is where I'm asking you what career you're planning to pursue. And just answering whatever you have here, and we'll start kind of talking more about that stuff. So do those, hit submit, and then you're good. That would take you like 5 minutes if you wanted to just knock it out right now while it's all fresh, or you can do it later. I'll send an email. I'll bug you to do it again if I haven't heard from you. And I would like you to do this by April 15th. So it really walks you through what you have done and what you would need to accomplish next year to stay on a good track before registration gets too far into it. So ask for help if you need it. I'm going to stop the recording and then I can get this to come up. That's gracious.